Hi, I'm Gordon, and this, dear viewers, is the Canon PowerShot Pro 70, launched in November 1998 at a price of around $1,200. This was the first PowerShot aimed at professionals and high-end enthusiasts who couldn't stretch to the prohibitively expensive DSLRs of the day. It sported 1.7 megapixels, a 28-70 zoom, flip screen, and the chance to record RAW files, all packed into an SLR-styled body. As Canon's first really serious prosumer digital camera, it's a model that I've wanted in my collection for some time, but finding a working sample at a reasonable price has proven quite a challenge. They rarely turn up, and when they do, it's not unusual for prices to break into three figures. But in 2023, I managed to bag an untested Pro 70 on eBay for just £22. That sprang back into life given a new battery. DP Review were also kind enough to let me try out one from their own archive, coincidentally the first model that Phil reviewed on the site, albeit maybe not the exact same sample. So 25 years after it was originally launched, I took the Canon Pro 70 out onto the streets of Brighton to see what it could do. Today the Pro 70 looks like a fairly conventional SLR-styled bridge camera, with only the oval shape of the lens barrel, when viewed from the front, likely to elicit a second glance. But a quarter of a century ago, the Pro 70's design represented a significant departure for Canon's PowerShot series to date. The original PowerShot 600, launched 2 years previously in 1996, was an uninspired chunk of a camera with an unnecessarily large body that felt kind of empty in your hands. I'm not a big fan of the looks, although I have made a video all about it if you're interested in the genesis of the PowerShot series. And don't blame age either. Remember, 1996 was the same year that Sony launched the futuristic DSC-F1 seen here on the left, albeit lacking the PowerShot 600's invaluable support for removable memory cards. The following year proved equally uninspiring for Canon's digital cameras, with the PowerShot 600N recycling the body of its predecessor, and the new 350 failing to offer anything much more exciting than support for smaller compact flash memory cards. But something changed for Canon in 1998, arguably the first year that the company took consumer digital photography seriously. The PowerShot A5 launched a series of attractive compacts inspired by the Ixus range of APS-C film cameras, while the Pro 70 targeted the higher end with a raft of features to delight professionals and enthusiasts alike. Like the SLRs it was inspired by, the Pro 70 encourages two-handed operation, with your right hand on the substantial grip and your left hand supporting the chunky lens barrel. Even today it feels reassuringly secure and comfortable in your hands. On the upper left side is a satisfyingly clicky mode dial, which also acts as a power switch. Turning the dial clockwise from off sets the Pro 70 into full auto, followed by programmable mode, which unlocks the most exposure control, PC mode when connecting to a computer with a serial connection, and playback. You'll notice quite a gap between the P, PC and play positions on the dial, as if other more advanced modes had been removed, but the P mode still offers more functionality than most 1998 digital cameras. Like other Pro cameras, Canon opted not to build a flash into the Pro 70, instead relying on a hot shoe for external lighting alone. The lack of a built-in flash is a downside compared to rival prosumer digital cameras of the day, but the hot shoe is fully featured and compatible with Canon's speedlights, specifically the 220EX and 380EX models. The bulk of the controls are grouped on the upper right-hand side of the body around an LCD information screen. Of note are a CF button to select between memory cards, more about which in a moment, LCD video, which simply toggles the rear screen on and off as there's no actual video recording capabilities here, and a microphone button which allows you to add voice annotations to images. Meanwhile, the LCD screen on the top provides a wealth of information at a glance, including the image quality, the drive mode, any exposure compensation you've applied, shots remaining on the selected card, and the battery life. This display may not have a backlight option for use in dim or dark conditions, but it remains really useful. Beyond three navigation buttons, the rear of the right surface is entirely devoted to your right thumb, although it would have been nicer with the same rubber surface as the grip. For composition, the Pro 70 is equipped with an optical viewfinder and a colour screen on the back. The viewfinder adjusts as you zoom the main lens, providing fairly accurate framing, while the ring around the eyepiece adjusts the diopter rating. Meanwhile, the colour screen on the back measures 1.8 inches diagonally and is fully articulated, allowing you to easily frame at high or low angles, as well as forward to face you or back on itself for protection. Again, the screen is activated by pushing the LCD video button, with the live image appearing about 2 to 3 seconds later. Note, again, despite that button label, the Pro 70 does not have video recording capabilities, so it's going to be selfie photos you'll be capturing rather than vlogging when the screen's facing forward. In order to appeal to a higher end market, the Pro 70 is equipped with a decent quality zoom lens with a 2.5 times optical range equivalent to 28 to 70mm. This means the Pro 70 provides wider coverage than most rival digicams, which generally start closer to 35mm equivalent or even narrower. This is a key benefit of this camera. The motorized zoom is operated by a rocker control on the side of the barrel and has a single speed, taking roughly 3 seconds to go from one end of the range to the other. The camera resets the zoom on power up to around midway through the range. The entire optical mechanism is housed within the barrel, so there's no extending or moving parts to deal with on the outside, and this in turn makes the 37mm filter thread more useful. Canon supplies the Pro 70 with an oval-shaped rubber cap which fits over the entire front of the lens housing, but there's no means to attach it to the camera with a little cord for safekeeping, so do take care. Long term, this clearly was a bad idea, as I've never seen a used Pro 70 for sale with this original cap, although you could always use a 37mm cap on the filter mount, albeit now only protecting the main lens and not those windows above and below it for the viewfinder and the focus assist light. Push the flower button on the top and the Pro 70 enters its macro mode, focusing as close as 12cm and automatically zooming the lens to the longest focal length for the maximum impact. You can subsequently zoom the lens back out a bit when set to macro, but the range is limited and obviously the reproduction reduces. The lens has a maximum aperture of f2 to 2.4, and in P mode a menu option lets you manually set a variety of aperture values from wide open to f8, effectively turning it into an aperture priority mode. If f8 isn't blocking sufficient light, the Pro 70 also has access to an f8 plus ND4 option, which in terms of exposure is equivalent to f16, but without the associated diffraction. If you're manually selecting the aperture, the value is displayed on screen in P mode alongside the shutter speed, but there's no way for you to manually select shutter speeds on the camera itself. You can, however, adjust exposure compensation in P mode from a plus or minus 2 EV range in 1/3 increments. Oh, and for the record, the Pro 70 does have access to shutter speeds from half a second to 500th of a second, and that extends to 8,000th of a second when set to its reduced resolution or its burst mode, but again, you won't be choosing any of these manually. Behind the flap on the grip side are not one but two compact flash memory card slots, with the first accommodating thicker Type 2 cards, like the recently released IBM Microdrive. Like other cameras which can take the microdrive, you'll find that it does slow the overall handling a little bit from the initial power up to imaging, recording or playback. Now, twin card slots are unique in its peer group, but sadly you can't record to both cards simultaneously for backup, or in my test I couldn't auto switch from one to the other when the first one was filled. Instead, you'll need to push the CF button on the top to toggle between the cards if two are installed, so the two slots only really save you from ejecting a card and inserting another one, but still, it's a fun feature. In terms of ports, a rubber flap on the left-hand side opens to reveal an N3 type remote terminal jack, a 3.5mm composite video output, and a narrower digital output socket, which connects directly to a computer using the supplied serial cable and the acquisition software. Meanwhile, the Pro 70 is powered by an NB4H NIMH battery pack that's charged externally using the supplied AC adapter. It's a proprietary battery, but Canon designed it and the compartment to alternatively accommodate a single 2CR5 lithium pack if you're caught short. Now, the compartment looks like it might accommodate a pair of these, but you only actually need one and it only fits one way around. Moving on to the sensor, the Pro 70 employs a 1/2" type CCD with 1.68 megapixels in total and a CYGM colour filter array rather than the more common RGBG. The sensor delivers images with a maximum size of 1536 by 1024 pixels in the wider 3x2 shape of film cameras and most DSLRs versus the squarer 4x3 shape of most digicams. Pushing the quality button in auto mode lets you choose between two JPEG compression levels, while turning the dial to P mode unlocks a reduced resolution option at 768 by 512 pixels, again available with two JPEG levels, but now with a slightly boosted sensitivity range up to 400 ISO and, as noted earlier, a faster top shutter speed of 8,000th of a second. P-Mode also lets you select an uncompressed 10-bit RAW file mode, with files measuring around 2 megabytes each versus around 350 to 450 kilobytes when recording best quality JPEGs, at least in my tests. But while these RAW files are inevitably larger than JPEGs, they are roughly half the size of the uncompressed TIFF options of rival cameras, with the added benefit of greater tonal depth. Like most 1998 rivals, there's no video recording capabilities, but the Pro 70 does offer a fair burst mode. Set the camera to P, push the drive button, and the Pro 70 will reduce the resolution to 768 by 512, boost the maximum ISO and shutter speed as mentioned earlier, before letting you fire off up to 20 frames. In my test, those 20 frames in a burst took about 8 seconds for a speed of 2.5 frames per second in practice, and the camera took roughly 15 seconds to finish writing them after the burst completed. So overall, a solid set of specifications back in 1998, but how practical is the Pro 70 to use a quarter of a century later? As with all vintage digital cameras, your two greatest challenges will be getting a working battery and then accessing the actual image files on a modern computer. As expected, the dedicated battery pack on my Pro 70 had long given up the ability to hold any charge, and my eBay purchase didn't include an AC adapter to charge it anyway. Luckily, the ability to alternatively use a 2CR5 battery is a lifesaver for the Pro 70, as while rechargeable versions may be rare, disposable packs are still readily available. I bought a pair from Amazon in 2023 for about £8. The second piece of good luck for the Pro 70 is employing compact flash memory cards, as both the cards and USB readers are still available today. I used my trusty SanDisk 1GB Ultra 2 card, as well as my 1GB IBM microdrive. Both worked absolutely fine on the Pro 70, which satisfyingly reported over 999 large fine JPEGs remaining. I could even open the Pro 70 CRW RAW files in the latest version of Adobe Camera Raw, although the white balance did need considerable adjustment to get anywhere near to that of the JPEGs that were taken at the same time and which looked much more accurate. Interestingly, this was also an issue when testing the Pro 70 back with its original Twain driver in the late 90s, so I'm sticking with my JPEGs for my customary slideshow, which follows in a moment. So without further ado, here's a bunch of photos that I took with the Pro 70 around Brighton 25 years after it first came out. These are all large fine JPEGs straight out of camera without any adjustment. See you in a minute for my final verdict. The PowerShot Pro 70 arguably marks the point that Canon took prosumer digital photography seriously. Unlike the uninspired models which preceded it in the PowerShot range, this was a camera designed to truly tempt enthusiasts and even professionals who couldn't stretch the price of a digital SLR. Highlights included the wider than usual 28-70 zoom, support for RAW files and twin card slots, all rarities at the time, accompanied by a hot shoe, fully articulated screen and pretty respectable image quality, at least in 1998. On the downside, you couldn't record to both cards at the same time. There was no built-in flash, no manual focusing and only one leisurely zoom speed. The seed was sown though, with Canon's second PowerShot Pro model, the Pro 90 IS, arriving just over 2 years later in early 2001, packing an impressive 10 times optical zoom range with image stabilization, a wealth of shooting modes including video, and a pop-up flash in addition to the hot shoe. The third model in the series, the PowerShot Pro 1, arrived in 2004 with even more features, including the first L-branded lens on a Digicam, but it proved to be the last with the Pro branding. You see, something else was going on in the range. Rewind to the year 2000 and you'll see that Canon launched the feature-packed PowerShot G1, which actually provided most of the internals for the Pro 90IS a year later. And by the time the Pro 1 was released in 2004, the PowerShot G series was already on its 6th generation and proving extremely popular. It may not have had Pro in the title, but did indeed provide a similar degree of control and features desired by enthusiasts. Meanwhile, in 2003, Canon launched the EOS 300D, or Digital Rebel, the company's first affordable DSLR. Both it and the evolving PowerShot G models heralded the end of the PowerShot Pro series. Of the three PowerShot Pros, the original Pro 70 is of course the least practical to use today, relying on disposable battery packs and only offering limited quality and control. If you intend to shoot regularly today with one of these vintage cameras, the Pro 90IS and especially the Pro 1 are much more practical, although personally speaking, I don't think the Pro 1 really deserves its unicorn status and used prices which can approach or even top triple figures. I waited a while and eventually bagged one for a much more reasonable £25. I'd also recommend one of the PowerShot G models if you're after a vintage Canon Digicam experience, although again do make offers on auctions or just wait for a reasonably priced model to come along. Canon sold a lot of these cameras and people are just asking too much money for them in my view. Ultimately, Canon may have only made 3 PowerShot Pro cameras, but each one has an important place in the company's history and their evolution of high-end Digicams. I really enjoyed using them all in the present day, and at least one should be in any series collection, so which should it be? So tell me, did you have one of the PowerShot Pro triplets, or do you still shoot with one today? I'd love to hear from you in the comments about your early Digicam experiences regardless of the brand, and the models that you owned, or simply lusted after back in the day. As always, if you enjoy what I do here, the best way to support this channel is to subscribe and to watch as many of my vintage videos as you dare. And I already have ones all about the PowerShot Pro 90IS, Pro 1 and G1 if you're a big Canon fan. Thanks for watching and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.